All right, today as always we are starting with a brand new fresh out of the package canvas. I haven't done anything else to it. And I'm just going to make kind of a variegated background. So I'm going to start a little darker at the bottom and move up lighter, but I'm not going to be real specific with it. So I can have patches that are darker or lighter throughout. And I'm going to use my 1-inch flat brush. I'm going to wet it really good in my jar and wipe off the edge. Now I'm using Cobalt Blue, but the color of blue that you use on the background here doesn't really matter. I'm not using Phthalo Blue on the background because when we start doing the little pine needles, I'm going to use Phthalo Blue there, and I don't want them to blend in with the background too much. So I'm going to load up with Cobalt, really squishing my brush in there to pick up a lot of paint. I'm pretty much only going to use Cobalt at the bottom and then let it kind of drag throughout the rest of the canvas. I may pick up little bits of it here and there. And I'm going to start with just a little point of white, maybe 2 little points of white. And right at the bottom here, just kind of back and forth in lazy X's. Remember, for good coverage, you want to kind of focus on covering one area at a time. Don't try and scatter everywhere or try and cover the entire area. Small brush strokes just until the white of the canvas is covered. And then lighter pressure just to smooth out any hard brush stroke lines. Unless you want to leave them there. I don't think it looks bad. I think I'll take it up a little higher on this side. Good amount of pressure just to get some of that paint off of my brush. Maybe I will pick up just a tiny bit more blue and some white. Start right outside of where I left off. And then light pressure just to kind of dust them together a bit. See that light pressure gets rid of brush stroke marks and just kind of gives them a little bit more of a faded look. Tiny spot of blue and more white. Now I think I'm about done picking up blue. Obviously there's still some on my brush. Just picked up some white. And same thing, so I'm just laying down the bulk of the paint on my brush, and then I can come back with light pressure and just break that line up a bit. I think I do want to bring that blue up just a little bit higher, so I picked up just a tiny bit more blue. If you decide that you want to change it as you go, but the previous section is already dry, then just pick up a little bit of both color. Since we're just working with 2 colors here, you can easily make it look like the color is blended in, even if the section you're working in is dry. Good amount of white, and we'll fill in the top here. See, so none of it is going to be pure white. That blue carried throughout the entire background. I am applying this paint a little bit heavier than I typically would, just so that in the next section, some of our little bokeh lights will blend in with the background a bit. But if you're not, and if your background is dry by the time you get to your bokeh lights, that's okay, don't worry about that. I'm just gonna take the rest of my white and what's on my brush and just kind of fill this area in. I'm not too worried about it blending or anything. Just underpainting for our snow later. All right, now I put out some matte medium, and I would say that, I mean, technically you can do this without matte medium. I get asked every time, do I have to use the medium? If you don't have it, you can try not to use it, but your lights are gonna be much more solid. You're not gonna get the ones that are very transparent and seem very, very distant unless your background is very, very wet. I'm going to use this large soft filbert. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide. I wet it in my jar and then dried it pretty good on a paper towel. So I'm going to load up with my matte medium. Lots and lots of matte medium. I'm going to start with some very transparent bokeh lights first. So I'm going to come into my white and just pull out a little bit. And of course there is a little bit of blue in there. So just start somewhere. I'm going to put my brush so that it's flat. Whoop, a little bit of moisture in there, that's okay. And just kind of spiral it. And you can actually draw a circle if you want to. I'm not worried about those drips. I can take care of those easily. So see that light, you can barely see it. But when we build up layers from super thin bokeh lights into much stronger ones, you'll be able to see them more and more. I'm going to kind of leave that section because if I mess with it anymore, I'm just going to lift more of that paint. So we'll leave it for a minute. I'm going to get more matte medium. I dried my brush off on my paper towel a little bit better. A little bit more white. And I'm really just going to kind of cover this background in variations of sizes of lights as well as colors and opacities. So we'll put one down in here. See how I just kind of spiral it around. And then I'm going to take the edge and just lightly, just kind of break that up. I just don't want solid lines on these big transparent ones. The bigger they are, the more transparent they should be because that's going to push them into the distance more. The smaller they are, the more opaque you can make them because that's going to bring them a little bit closer to you. Let's do another one here, maybe a little bit smaller. Just break up that edge a bit. Let's go just a little bit wider. And I'll put one up here, maybe going off of the canvas. Don't be too stressed out about your lights being perfectly round. You know, if you have one that doesn't look perfectly round, just put another light over it later. Let's grab a little bit of blue in there. And we'll throw one up here in this white area. Super light pressure. Don't use your brush flat here to break up this line because all you're going to do is make your light bigger and bigger. If you get edges like that where this paint is pretty dry so it kind of looks fuzzy, I just picked up a little bit of matte medium. And now I can gently go around it and just soften that line. And that's going to be a nice big light, and that's okay. And any little spots on him I don't like, I'll cover it up later with another light. Just kind of play with the color mixtures. Even put some of the blue ones down in here because it's going to be just slightly different of a blue color. Don't be afraid to let your lights touch. They can completely overlap each other, all kinds of things. And let some of them go off the edge. Don't keep them contained right into the center of the canvas. Let's get a brighter color, a little bit extra white. I didn't pick up any more matte medium. And I can start covering this little drip section here. I'm not going to put all of my lights right on the center of it because then I'll just have a little line of lights. But I'm confident that that ugly little line will be gone by the time I'm done. See how I have so many of them now that they're all starting to overlap a bit. And that's what you want. You want this to really look like distant lights Now they get kind of fuzzy in like a photograph when you're focused on something close up. So that's what we're kind of going for. And those lights wouldn't have any regard for each other and try not to overlap each other. They would absolutely overlap. So don't you be afraid to overlap anything. Okay, I'm gonna go down to my number 8 filbert, and again, with some matte medium, maybe not quite as much. I'm gonna start making these a little bit more opaque since these are gonna be smaller, so we wanna make them look a little closer. So I'm gonna load up with a good amount of white, and I'm gonna absolutely overlap quite a few of these distant ones. Let's start right here. Same thing, just kind of press it flat and turn it. And I like those hard edges on these closer ones. A lot of times when you see bokeh lights, they have that. It's a little bit harder around the edge. And again, if one of them is just shaped kind of dumb, put another light over the edge of it. You might want to wait for it to dry just a little bit before you start overlapping them, but you can cover it up. Just don't fight with it and keep trying to reshape it, because then it's just going to get huge and then you won't like it. And I don't think there's any such thing as too many. I know whenever we've done bokeh lights in the past, somebody always says, oh, I got a little crazy with it and did too many. I don't think you can. I really don't think there's such thing as too many lights. Do as many lights as you want to do. Load that puppy up. I think that's looking pretty good. I might be about done. And I am still kind of playing with the opacity of these. Even though they're smaller and closer, I'm making some of them a little bit more transparent than others, just for variation. And you could throw different colors in here if you wanted. I just wanted a very subdued background. All right. I think that's going to be my last one. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll come back and get started on our tree. Okay, this is all pretty much dry. I think this one up here is still a little wet, but he's not going to be in our way. So what I'm going to do is give a very faint kind of spray of white to make it look like maybe some frost or light snow or something. But we're not going to do like splattering like we do with stars. And I'm going to use my 1-inch flat brush. Now for this, I know some of you like to use a toothbrush, and that would be perfect for right here. I don't have a toothbrush, so I'm just going to use this. So I'm going to wet it in my jar, and then just kind of shake off the extra drips. I'm not wiping it off. Then I'm going to come into my white paint, pull out a little bit of white, and start mixing the water in my brush with the paint. I don't want it to flow, and right now it's flowing around quite a bit. So I'm just going to keep pulling a little bit of paint in until it doesn't flow anymore. I want it to be nice and thin, but not running all over the place. The thinner the paint is, you know, when it's really runny like that, the harder it's going to be for you to control. That's still running just a little bit. A little more paint. And that's pretty good. I'm just going to kind of scoop some up in the tip of my brush. And then I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to start at the bottom and see how I get this nice kind of fine spray. I want that spray to be pretty heavy at the bottom, and then as I work my way up, I'm going to lighten my splatters so it kind of fades up. But I am definitely going to take this spray all the way to the top, just not so heavy. Keep turning your brush in all different directions because it will kind of spray in a line. And so if you do it all with your brush like this, you're gonna have stripes. So sometimes I do it like that, sometimes I turn it that way. And I'm starting to angle up to kind of make that spray just a little bit lighter. When you do it this way, it doesn't really get all over your face like, like when we splatter stars. add as much of this as you want. You could, you know, make it so heavy that it almost obliterates everything down here, or you could do it really faintly. I'm gonna kind of go about in the middle of those two. I'm gonna do quite a bit, but not enough that I lose everything at the bottom. Get a little bit more. Sometimes when you use the paint really thin, it kind of all runs toward the ferrule. So if that starts happening, just kind of come to your palette, scrape it off like that, and then suck it back up in the tip of the brush. Okay, there's our faint little snow spray. Now I'm not gonna worry about letting it dry when I start doing the tree. I will pull a little bit of that white into the tree trunk, and I feel like that's okay because it helps kind of get started with the texture. So to do the tree, I'm gonna use my 1/2" angle brush, wet it in my jar and wiped it on the edge, and I've got a little bit of black paint. So I'm gonna pull a bit of that out. I'm just gonna start with black, and that's gonna help give a nice underpainting to the tree. Since the burnt umber is kind of transparent, then I don't have to worry about that. Now to do my tree, all of my brush strokes are gonna be short, kind of jaggedy. But if you wanted a very smooth tree, you could kind of draw your line all at once. Remember with the angle brush, the tip always drags, so I've got it pointed down because I'm gonna start down here and just kind of start like that, just to give my tree its initial shape. I'm kind of going for those little, you know, the little Charlie Brown trees that are kind of sad and bare looking. So that's my basic shape, and now I can kind of work on that and thicken it out where I want it. Still just very short, clipped brush strokes. Getting a little whiter as we go down. Keep a little angle on him right there. And we'll give him some little branches. But the same thing, just very short, clipped angles. This is one of those little trees that, you know, nobody at the tree lot wants because it doesn't have very many branches. But I always thought they were super cute, and when I was little, that was the kind of tree that we always looked for when we went to the tree lots. And our Christmas tree isn't going to be black, but I don't think there's anything wrong with black Christmas trees. In fact, my Christmas tree at home is black. I don't know if that surprises any of you. It's not a scary looking tree though. I think it's super cute. It's like black and tinsely and kind of silvery. It's very sparkly. And then we put white lights on it with these really brightly colored, kind of pop colored ornaments. In fact, the ornaments we're gonna do on here are very similar to the ornaments that I have on my tree at home. I'm gonna make this one just a little bit longer. There we go. And maybe we'll give him one more little shorty right there. I feel like he needs one in the middle. So we'll kind of say this one comes from here out like that. All right, I cleaned off my brush and now I have some burnt umber, and I didn't wait for that black to dry, so I will pick up some of that, and that's okay. Again, it'll just help us with the texture of our tree so we don't have to work so hard for it. So I'm gonna load it up with burnt umber, and then I'm gonna come into my white and just kind of poke into it, just get a little bit. I'm gonna do a very similar thing to how I laid down the black, just kind of start somewhere. And see, by not mixing that white, and because the black is still wet, it's helping me get a little bit of movement in the trunk to indicate some texture. And you don't have to take this all through the little branches. I'm gonna kind of start into it and then just kind of let it stop, and the end of the branch can be black. That's okay. So see, I'm putting a little bit of pressure on my brush. See how I'm kind of squishing it a little bit so I get kind of a wide line, and then just kind of flick it in the direction. If it goes outside of the shape that you've set for your tree, that's okay. Just either let it be there, or you can widen the trunk a little or put an ornament or something over it. But I wouldn't sweat it. He's a gnarly little sad tree. So if he's not perfect, that makes him perfect. Kind of like us, right? We're not perfect, and that's what makes us perfect. Just don't overwork the paint in any one area, because then you'll just end up with a very flat color. I'm going to make this branch so that it's coming from the center there. In fact, I might take just a little bit more black and put that on the underside, so it's obvious that that branch is growing up from the part of the tree that's facing us. And you know what? I might do that with this one too, just a little bit of extra black. There, now not all the branches are just poking straight out of the side. These two are kind of coming from the front, and you can do that with any of them. It's just a matter of putting a teeny tiny little line in the front. See, I went outside of my line a little bit there, and that's okay. Okay, I've zoomed it in there so I can show you up close how we're going to do the bristles on the end of the branches. So I'm going to stay with my 1/2 inch angle, and I'm going to load up with some brown, some of my burnt umber. So don't try and come in here and draw these perfectly crisp lines that come out. Just kind of touch the edge of your brush and just kind of let it do what it's going to do. So I'm not really drawing a line, I'm just kind of touching and pulling it away. And this brown is just the underpainting, just to give it a bit of depth. Oh, that one's a little long. That's okay. I'll just make some of these a little longer. There we go. I'll do these ones a little bit smaller since it's a little bit of a smaller branch. And we'll put some on this little guy here, nice and small. You can make these as thick as you want or as thin as you want. And up here, I'm going to do these ones, except I'm not going to do this one because that's where our star is going to go. All right, we're going to go back to the first ones that we did, and I have some phthalo blue and some cadmium yellow light. And the cadmium yellow light that I'm using is the heavy body, but if you just have it in basics, that's perfectly fine. The reason I want to use it in heavy body here is because the cadmium yellow light heavy body is actually pretty opaque, so it'll show up a little bit better. But don't worry about it if you don't have it. You don't have to go running out and buying that just for this. So I'm going to take a bit of phthalo blue, try and make sure that you can see all of this, and mix it in here, get a nice dark green, quite dark. And I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure that you don't try and leave the branch inside. You can go ahead and cover it up with some of this. Don't try and cover up all of that brown. You put it there for a reason. So if you cover it all up, then you might as well just skip that part. Make it as thick and as heavy as you like, or as thin as you like, whatever you want to do. See, because the phthalo blue is such a different tone than the cobalt blue we used on the background, it stands out a little bit better. if I just use the cobalt, I think the green wouldn't show quite as much. Then I'm going to come back in, same color still on my brush, I didn't clean it off. I'm going to pull more yellow in, get a lighter green, and the same thing. And I'm not going to cover the entire thing. See, I'm putting very little of this in. Just kind of add some highlights. Definitely leaving some of that brown in the first green showing. I'm just going to finish these two and then I'm going to zoom you out while I do the rest of them. And then I'm going to come over here to where I've got yellow without the blue in it, pull some out and get a much brighter green, much more yellow. And same thing, and every time my color gets lighter, I'm going to do less and less of it. All right, there's our little branches. So now we can start adding some ornaments. I'm just going to do 3 ornaments and the star. And for all of that, I'm going to use quinacridone, more of my cadmium yellow light, and I've got a little bit of cobalt blue here, and I think I'll use the cobalt instead of the phthalo, just because it'll give us quite a different green from what we have in the branches. I'm not going to get too crazy detailed with the star. I'm still going to stick with my 1/2" angle brush. And I'm going to get some quinacridone and mix it with my yellow. Just get a nice orange. And I'm just going to sketch kind of a bendy star. Now, I'm that person who has to do it like I'm drawing a star, you know, like the scribble type star. Otherwise, I can't get it to look the way I want it to. See, it gave it kind of a curvy shape. I think I might make it just a little bit bigger. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave this weird orange star. It's not going to be orange when we're done. Now I'm going to go to my number 3 round brush, but use whatever you're comfortable with here. Wet it in my jar bit, and I'm going to grab a little point of white and mix it in with some yellow. I still want to keep it yellow. I'm just trying to make it just a bit more opaque. And I didn't wait for that orange to dry, so the orange is still wet. I'm going to come in here and just start in the middle and just kind of tap. And that's going to help give it kind of a broken effect, and I feel like it almost makes it look glittery. Like it's got some glitter or something on it. I'm taking it almost all the way to the very edge. We'll still have a a little hint of that orange there. So I'm not trying to cover it completely. Now let's get some more white and more yellow, and we're gonna go lighter. We're gonna do the same thing. Well, let's go even lighter than that. I'm just mixing some white in with what's on my brush. If your star is really wet and you feel like you're just not getting the coverage, it's just kind of mixing together, then just let it dry. You can come back and do this part later. I might let him dry and come touch it up later. I'm just gonna get this on there. Yeah, I think I'll let him dry for a bit. So this little branch kind of comes up and down, so I'm gonna hang an ornament off of there. And all of my ornaments are gonna be different sizes. You can do different shapes if you like to. I'm just gonna stick with round. So I'm gonna go to my number 3 round, get a little poke of white, mix it with my quinacridone just a bit. I don't want the color to be too much lighter than the quinacridone actually is, just a little bit. And then I'm gonna come in here and just draw a circle. Make sure that you leave enough room for the little hook. And if you need to use something to stencil the circle shape, that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Fill that in. And then I'll work on refining the shape after I get it all filled in. So always, if you're hand drawing a circle like I am, always start out just a little bit smaller than you think you want it, because that leaves room so you can make adjustments. I'm sure there's somebody out there who can draw a at least near perfect circle on the first go, but I think that very few of us are one of them. So if it takes you a couple of adjustments, don't feel bad about that. I think that looks close enough. Now what I'm going to do is just come into my white, and I just grabbed a little bit. We're going to do that same kind of dot texture that we did on the star. So I'm going to start right here where I want my highlight. See, I'm just kind of pressing it. I'm just going to do that and kind of work it out. Just a tiny bit of white. See, I just picked up a little speck. Take it all the way to the edge. And that's just going to give a little texture to our ornament, so it's not just perfectly smooth. I like it to look like it's a little bit glittery. And you could certainly add glitter to it if you like. Now I'm going to go just into the quinacridone. I'm going to do the same thing down here in my little shadow area. I'm still just blotting. If you need to do an actual brush stroke at the edge of the ball, that's fine. Then go back and just kind of blot it a little bit. Right up into that color. Just keep adding the light and the shadow until it looks like what you want it to look like. And you can change it, you know, if you decide, oh, I don't want my highlight there. Just add the dark back into it and add the highlight somewhere else. That's okay. Just make sure you break that highlight up so you don't have like this weird kind of, you know, perfectly round spot and then everything else is dark. That's gonna make your ornament look very flat. So I think I'm happy with that. I'm not gonna put the top on it until later. Right over here, I'm gonna put an orange ornament, and I think I might go a little bit bigger. So some quinacridone into my yellow, get a nice bold orange color. Make sure that it hangs down enough. All right, there's our layer of orange. I'm gonna go into my white and mix a bit of that in with the yellow. So yellow, kind of a light yellow, is gonna be our highlight color here. And I'm gonna start the same way. Let's grab a bit more of that quinacridone into our orange mixture and get a much redder mixture. And we'll use this for our shadow color. I cleaned off my brush because getting too much white into this orange is going to give us that fry sauce color that we've talked about in the past. It's a gross color if you're not familiar with fry sauce. Well, I guess it's not a gross color, but it's definitely not a color that I would find attractive in a Christmas ornament. That's for sure. And if you don't know what fry sauce is, it's different everywhere you go, but it's pretty much ketchup and mayo mixed together. Some people love it. I'm not a fan. And we'll just get a little point of white and just really pop that highlight right there. One more little ornament, and I think I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to use what I have left of my Cobalt Blue and some of my yellow. I'm going to mix up a very bright green, so closer on the yellow side. So we get kind of a lime green. I think that that lime green color will be fun with the orange and the quinacridone. A little bit of white. And we'll make our little circle. And I think if your paint is quite transparent and you can see your bokeh lights through the ornament, I think that that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about that. That just means that your ornament is a little more transparent than mine is. It's made out of see-through glass. Or mine might be painted these colors. Okay, a little point of white. And I'm going to mix it in with my yellow. I still have the green on my brush. And we're going to do the same thing. All right, down here at the bottom of the ornament, I'm going to get some more of my cobalt and mix it. And I'm just going to get a little bit of a darker green. Not a ton darker. That might be just a little bit too dark. That's better. I want it to be noticeably darker, but not, not so dark that it makes the ornament look like it's completely being, in a hard light right here. I just want it a little bit darker there. Lost a bit of my highlight, but that's okay. I can easily put that right back in. Let's go ahead and finish our star. So I just picked up just yellow. I'm just going to fill all in. I can still see a little hint of that orange through there. Decided I don't want him to be quite so orange because then he kind of looks like the other ornament. but I do still want just a hint of that orange around the edge because that will help set the star apart from the background. The yellow and the blue on the background are so close to the same value, meaning darkness, that it would make it so the star just kind of disappeared into the background. So if you were to take this image and put it into a black and white photo, you would see that the star in the background aren't quite so different in value. Okay, now I'm gonna get some white, a little bit of my yellow, and we can start doing that same thing, just right in the middle. Break it up, but keep it nice and bright right in the center. Now on our ornament tops, I'm gonna go super simple. Taking my number 8 Bright and I wet it in my jar. I'm gonna grab some white and just mix it with a tiny bit of black. Just get kind of a medium gray color, about like that. I'm gonna come into here, make sure you're doing it right in the center, right at the very top. If you wanna put a little line there so you know where that is. And just kind of make a flat, just like that. Then you can come back if you wanna get just a little highlight, little point of white, come from the other side. And just do the same thing. And that's really all I'm gonna do on these. You can go a little bit more, you know, detailed if you want to, but I don't feel like they are, you know, a terribly important part of the painting. So I'm not worried about them being overly simplified. I do wanna pull it down into the ornament just a little bit. And on this guy, we'll make his just a little bit smaller. Back to my number 3 and my black. I'm gonna do very simple little wires on here. So I'm gonna come from the top of the ornament holder, whatever that little part is called. Just make a little loop and bring it up over the branch. My brush is a little drier than I want it to be. 2 weeks in a row I've dropped my paintbrush with black paint on it. This time it didn't get on my painting, just my shirt. That's okay. And then we'll bring that little bit down. And that's what I'm gonna do on all of these, except this time I'm not gonna drop my paintbrush. Maybe, we'll see. I think we've all used these super awkward and weird little decoration wires, and they never seem to hold anything, and they always fall off. And I always buy green ones and then try to hide them. And okay, we are almost done with our painting, and then we can do the other fun part. So I'm using my 1/2-inch flat brush. If you want to use your 1-inch, that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to load up with some white and grab a little bit of my cobalt that's left over, and just very simply using the edge of my brush, just going to start kind of laying that in somehow, just really from one side to the other. I'm not trying to blend the blue and the white. I like the little streaks. Make sure to cover the base of that tree. Okay, one last thing and we're done. I'm going to take my number 8 filbert, got a little bit of fresh white, and just kind of dipping into it. And I'm going to build up a bit of snow on the edge of the tree. You can do this on the branches if you like. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. And then just smooth that into the snow. And we can do that around the edge of the hill as well, wherever you want it, and just smooth it in. So this is really similar to how we did the snow in the winter cabin video, but just a little bit more simplified. I'm not gonna put quite as much time and energy into it, although you certainly could. I think I am gonna make it brighter here toward the front. Just kind of sketch in some there at the base of the tree. I think I'm actually pretty happy with it without the snow on the branches, but you are absolutely more than welcome to go ahead and do that if that's what you like. So I'm pretty much happy with how this looks. I'm gonna let it dry completely, and then we'll move on to the really fun part. Okay, now before we start poking holes into our canvas, and maybe this part isn't necessary, but I want to do it to be on the safe side, because I'm afraid that once we start poking holes into it, that over time the canvas may split, especially if you change the lights out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this is gloss super heavy gel, and that doesn't really matter. Whatever gel you have, you can use that. I would avoid using a paste, because paste can crack. Over time, it's not as flexible. You could probably even use a couple heavy layers of Mod-Podge if you like. I don't have Mod-Podge, so this is what I'm using. And again, you don't have to use the super heavy gel. You could use just regular gel or matte gel, whatever. And I'm gonna scoop some out with my palette knife, and then I'm gonna spread it fairly thin, just all across the back here. I feel like this will just help secure the fibers a little bit more, so that over time they don't start to split and pull apart from each other. I'm gonna spread it fairly thin across the entire back of the canvas. And the reason I'm doing it across the entire back is because as it dries, it may shrink a little and pull the canvas. And if it's not spread across the entire canvas, I'm afraid that would get a little bit of warping. And obviously, you want to make sure that your painting is dry before you lay it down like this. Make sure you cover all of it. And then we're going to give it probably about 30 minutes to dry. Maybe a little bit longer than that. Now get up underneath here even, underneath the frame. I did experiment with this a little bit last Christmas. There was a painting I was going to do with this, and then I just ran out of time and didn't end up making it. But I did pop the holes in it, and they were kind of saggy, and the lights didn't stay in real well. So hopefully this kind of helps fix that problem. And I think I'm going to have to look at the lights that I got a little bit closer. I think that they're pretty well contained in their plastic covering, that I can probably even put a little bit of this around the back of the lights to keep them secured in there. I don't know, I might be crazy and go for it, we'll see. All right, I think that's good. I believe I've got all of the canvas covered. So now we're just gonna let this dry. This thin and on the back of the canvas, it shouldn't take too long. Like I said, maybe 30, 40 minutes. Okay, now we can start planning out where we want our lights. Now the lights that I got, they're these little tiny LED lights with the clear wire, and there's only 10 on this strand, and they had one that had 20, but the reason I got this one was because it was clear, the other one had a black wire, and the battery pack on the other one was much fatter. This is a little bit more narrow of a battery pack, so I feel like it'll fit on the canvas a little bit easier, and we'll take care of that later. So each of the lights is roughly 4 inches apart. You don't want to try and stretch it as far as you can because they'll just pull themselves out of the canvas. So kind of leave them baggy like that when you're determining where you want to put them. And to mark where they're going to go, I have these little sticker dots. Now I know that I want my first one to be in the center of my star. So I'm just going to lightly put a sticker dot over the star. So if we come over from the star, I know I can easily reach right here. And I'm just going to do that, keep kind of stretching them and finding places to put these little sticker dots. We can rearrange them later if we need to. And your lights don't have to be all right on the branches. I know it looks like mine are, but I probably will put mine off the edge just a little bit. Make sure you only mark as many spots as you have lights. Okay, so that's where all of our lights are gonna go, and the gel on the back of my canvas is dry. It tightened up my canvas quite a bit, which is exactly why I wanted to make sure I put it on the entire back and not just in a few spots. Now you can use whatever you have to pop the holes in. I would say you want it to be something pretty small. You don't want it to be even as big as the light because then the light is going to be loose and it will fall out. So I'm going to use this little razor blade I have. It's got a sharp little point. And I'm going to come up to where I want one of my lights to be. So what I'm going to do is just stab right into it. Since my knife is very sharp, it's not going to distort my canvas too much. And then I'm going to go the other way, so kind of like a little X. There we go. And that should be big enough for our light to pop into. Let's test it out. So I've got my light, I'm going to take it through the back and gently push it through. And that fits nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and do that through all of these. And I'll worry about attaching all of the lights after I'm done. I'm going to put this one off of the stem just a bit. You can go through later and draw wires if you want when you're done installing all of your lights. I may or may not. I'll see what it looks like when I'm done. And now I can install all of the lights. Okay, so I have this raised up so that the lights aren't sitting on top of my table. And I decided I am gonna secure these in with a little bit of gel. So I've got my battery pack down here, and as you may or may not be able to tell, it fits in there pretty good. It fits almost flush with the frame. I'm just gonna use some tape to secure it. But these lights, they're pretty much encased in this plastic coating, so I feel pretty secure putting this gel around them. I'm just going to use an old paintbrush to do that. So I'm just going to get some of my gel, a good amount about like that, and just come in here and go around all of these lights and make sure that I'm getting it on the canvas too, so it's sticking the light down to the canvas. And this, because I'm applying it thicker, it's going to take a little bit longer to dry, maybe an hour. I'm gonna let those dry for about 45 minutes to an hour before I try to pick it up so I can turn the lights on. In the meantime, I'm gonna take some tape. If you're gonna be displaying this, you might wanna use something stronger than this kind of tape, maybe some duct tape or something like that. I'm gonna go across it so that it's attached to the canvas, the frame of the canvas, as well as the back of the battery pack. Make sure you don't put the tape over top of the power button, obviously. And just kind of burnish it down a bit. Okay, when that's dry, we'll come back and we'll turn on the lights and see how it looks. Now there's our little lighted Christmas tree with the lights installed. And let's get a close-up look of the lights from the front as well as the back. So with the lights turned off, you can see the little nubs of the lights poking through the canvas. They're definitely noticeable when the lights are off, but I don't think that they look out of place at all. And this would even be really cute if you got some of those lights with the different colors on them. On the back, you can see where I put the extra gel on the lights, and I think it's holding them in there pretty securely. Those aren't gonna come popping out unless you really tug on them. Now, because of all of the wires kind of poking out the back, in order to not damage the front of the canvas, this is probably a painting that you'd want to lean against something, maybe on a bookshelf or on a fireplace mantle. If you plan on putting a heavy frame around it, that might add enough width that you could hang it on the wall without pushing those wires further into the canvas. I hope you enjoyed painting this and installing the little lights as much as I did. And I'm really excited to see your version of this painting and how you might use the light installation technique in other paintings as well. Make sure you check out the video description below for links to where you can find me all over the internet, including Facebook, Instagram, and my website. If you haven't yet already, make sure that you subscribe so that you can paint with me every single week. Thank you as always for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.